Hey everybody, welcome to Press Pause, the video game discussion show. I am your host, Carlos Rodella. With me, as always, is Dan Shu. Hey. Bitmob Shu, co-host. And today we have Mr. Drumroll, Alex Noisy.
Yeah, from Gaijin Games.
Gaijin.
Gaijin.
Why did I say Gaijin?
You say whatever you want, you know?
Because I like Gaijins. That doesn't make any sense. You always bring the show into the weird area, like, immediately.
Is that why you brought me on?
It is. So today we're actually going to kind of do a continuation of a discussion we had on your podcast, Mobcast, which, by the way, a new one's up soon. Yes?
It's up now?
Oh, it's up now?
Yeah.
So you go to bitmob.com/podcast.
Yep.
And you can hear us talk, all three of us.
That's
and Chris
us.
Kohler.
Yep.
Chris Kohler from Wired.com.
And that was awesome.
Yeah,
I wanted to keep
It was
nerding
fun.
out
Yeah.
all day. I went home just freaked out, wanted to play old video games.
You're
man.
like, I'm so inspired from
so
that
rad.
conversation.
Yeah.
Cool.
It was a fun conversation.
And then we're going to have a conversation, I think, at a video game arcade that came out of that sometime.
Oh, yes.
But today we're going to talk about a couple of those topics. Well, today we're talking about one, part 2, that comes out next week. We'll be talking about another part. But today we're going to talk about kind of like some of the early imagination from those old games, even like the text adventures like we were talking about. Some of the really interesting things they did with physics. You know, things we can learn from what they had to do with little graphics, with little, resources. And maybe some of the things we'd like to see in the AAA titles that we maybe aren't seeing, that maybe they did better back then. We started the talk I started to mention Richard Bartle, who worked on this thing called Mud, which was one of the first MMOs. It was a text adventure MMO RPG. And he did a bunch of things that were really interesting in that that didn't need a lot of crazy game graphics and stuff like that. I just want to do a quick quote from him. One of the things he said in the talk, which by the way you should watch, it's on GDC Archive. Go look for it. You see the link. Here's his quote. One of the things that the human brain has got through evolution is the ability to understand the world and process it in an instant. But when there's something different between what you see and what happens, then the brain notices. And that's the point at which either immersion is broken or you require an explanation. So I feel like that's an interesting topic.
That's kind of getting into the whole uncanny valley thing, too. Like, it's that same idea where you see something that doesn't quite fit, right?
Right, but it's even before Uncanny Valley, really.
Oh, yeah,
I mean, it
for
can
sure.
be, yeah.
Yeah, and it's more broad, I think, than the argument of realism.
Right.
But that's an interesting quote.
Yeah, and then he wanted to say something like, he used examples like from World of Warcraft and stuff like that. Like, I can build a snowman in a fire and neither is affected. Like simple things like that.
Right.
Like, that doesn't make sense,
yeah.
but it's okay because we just accepted it. So that's the idea. What do you guys would like to see that's more out of the box, more, not cookie cutter in AAA titles? Because they obviously have resources to do it.
Do they?
I'm going to go, or do they?
I don't know that they do.
Well, I mean, if you're doing simple things like a snowman being infected by fire in a text adventure, then you probably can pull it off in an MMO now.
You're saying like in a text adventure, the game will tell you it.
Right. It would do
just one extra line.
Right.
I'm assuming.
Well, I mean, there's numbers behind it.
Right.
So, anyways, just that whole idea. What do you think you'd like to see that isn't there?
Well, I would love to see all that crap, right? But that's like creating real life, in a way, right? So you're going to make a rule so that if you build a snowman in a fire, it's going to melt, and then you're going to spend your valuable resources during development on that. Right, and I think that's where this whole thing breaks down, is you get into a place where the player thinks this is illogical, and the developer thinks that's not worth my time.
Right.
Because I remember, and I remember when, was it Metal Gear Solid 3 came out, and they had all these demos of like how all the stuff in the world would behave correctly. He shot a glass that had ice in it, and the ice spilled out on the table, and there were 2 ice cubes that were joined because that happens, and there was one alone, and the one that was alone would melt faster than the 2 that were joined. And it was like stuff like that. And it was
that's going pretty narrow. I mean, we don't have to go all the way to those ice cubes. How about just the glass breaking, though?
But where do you draw the line?
Yeah.
I know.
It's like, why are these 2 ice cubes not joining together?
Well, I think I would be okay with the ice cubes. Truth be told, if the glass broke, because like Grand Theft Auto we talked about, there's that one mission where you can throw the rock through the window, but you can't throw the rock through any other window.
Oh, not cool.
I mean, come on, it's window physics. Isn't that 1999 window physics?
Also, if you set a precedent for I can't throw stuff through windows, and then you ask the player to do that
Yeah.
in a game.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know that part in Grand
GTA
Theft Auto,
4, yeah.
but if it's not scripted, you're asking the player to do something that they have learned from the rule set of the game they cannot do. And that's one thing I can't stand in video games.
Right.
I mean, I'm kind of going off on a rant or on a shoebox here, but or soapbox. Shoebox?
Shoebox is
Shoebox.
shoe, Bitmob shoe. Yeah, that's what it is.
But like in final boss battles especially, where they change it up and you're like, the whole game I have been shooting guys and now I have to punch him to death.
Yeah, yeah.
Like it's a totally different thing.
Right.
And so I don't know, it breaks the whole thing, but this is totally off topic.
Well, let's bring it back and say, how about just AI then? So what would you guys like to see AI-wise in AAA titles? I'll give you an example. My brother's playing Deus Ex Human Revolution, and everybody knows I have a little bit of a problem with that game. But one of the things is, simple things like guys repeating the same sentence. I mean, every new game that comes out has this issue.
Philadelphia. They keep saying the nightlife will get better, but how many times have we heard that before? They keep saying the nightlife will get better, but how many times have we heard that before? They keep saying the nightlife will get better, but how many times have we heard that before? They keep saying the nightlife will get better, but how many times have we heard that before? They keep saying the nightlife will get better, but how many
can
times?
make
That problem with
paragraphs.
UFC personal
UFC
trainer.
personal trainer, we both
Yeah.
had it. They're like, this is gonna be a burn. You should feel the burn by now. 20 minutes later, you should feel the burn. Yeah, I feel the burn. Shut up. But yeah, so I mean, like in that game, he walks around the corner and it's like the same sentence over and over and over again. And he's dying a bunch, so it's like even crappier he has to hear it that many times. That's one idea. AI fixes better. Anything?
I have something kind of similar to, like, I kind of realized this when I saw, I think it was Spider-Man 3, or one of the open world Spider-Man games. And then when, like, for example, he does something in the middle of a crowded street in New York, it's all, we kind of moved it recently into this new generation of open world games. Like, there's traffic, there's street lights, there's activity, people acting normal. Like, that's great, it's really immersive. But then Spider-Man, like, jumps down in the middle of the street, starts like throwing cars around, what does Spider-Man do?
Yeah, and no one does anything.
People just kind of are still walking along,
Yeah.
like it's like
Normal day, Spidey's got to throw a car.
Yeah, they I don't think they even do a second look, right? It's just like,
Right.
and you might hear a few audio clues, like, oh, it's Spider-Man or something, right? I don't remember the exact details, but what I would love
Oh,
to
it's
see,
Spider-Man, like destruction. Oh, it's Spider-Man.
or like
Never mind.
some kind
He's
of
a hero.
like freak out or some reaction to it.
Yeah.
Right? But the city is just like moving as normal.
That's a great one.
And then so what I would like to see is just that simple AI, kind of similar to your Deus Ex, like how NPCs are reacting to the humans,
Yeah.
to the player. I like to see kind of more realism there, where
Yeah.
they just act a little bit more organically
Yeah.
and natural. And GTA is not it. Like you might argue like, because a lot of times when you go around punching people, like the people around you might react or start screaming at you. But it's a little bit more, it's more like a comic book or a cartoon.
Yeah.
It's like kind of over the top.
I remember when Saints Row added when you punched like an old lady, she would fight back. I was like, that's better, but weird. Like old lady be like, oh yeah, let's do this karate.
nice.
And
Yeah.
I was like, what?
I think that's okay in the context of that game,
You're right,
right?
'cause
Because
they're
Saints
being
Row
silly.
is
Yeah, yeah,
really
yeah.
silly and over the top.
You were gonna say?
I was going to say that I think Fable 2 did that pretty well.
Yeah, actually,
and
that's
I
good,
was
yeah.
impressed with that. It's something I definitely did notice because that's kind of a pet peeve of mine too. Like I'm in the city and I'm just going nuts, and
Yeah.
but everyone's just like,
Yeah, but in
everything's
Fable 2, they did it in a kind of weird way too. There was a lot of funny segments made about it because they're all talking at the same time and they're all.
Yeah,
it
they
was
get-
a little.
Well,
at
it was
least
a
they
little bit
tried.
goofy, but yeah, they tried, and I thought that they made good strides. Like, because you get to nickname your character. Like, I can't remember what my character was called. The blood
coolest
bludgeon.
guy.
I don't know. You
Yeah.
know, and they're like, oh, it's the blood bludgeon, and you're like,
Yeah.
ooh, and then you hear them whispering, and then if you're like super nefarious, they part ways. When you walk through
Yeah.
town, and I think that's good. And then when you start wreaking havoc in Fable 2. Whenever, I think I even mentioned this on the podcast, like if you kick my dog in Fable 2,
Oh,
I will
yeah.
bring the town to the ground.
I love
and
all those guys.
and
Just
once
like
you
glass the town.
yes, once you start doing that, they do run and they freak out. But that is definitely one that has to, that should be high on the list.
Yeah.
I think.
Especially, I think, for open world games. If they
Definitely.
want you to do whatever you want,
Yes.
then I think the environment has to react accordingly.
Because it breaks you out of it. you
But
know?
it can be said for not even just open world, because I mean, if you're going on an adventure and you're going through this like building or whatever, and people are coming up to you, it'd be cool if it was more realistic when things are happening, for the story part of it. And that's the other thing I was going to say. A lot of this stuff that I wish was in these games, it just would help this story flesh out. I feel like it would make me feel more a part of this this thing that you want me to experience.
Well, and I think another thing that you would get out of it, if developers did it right, is you would get to that very sweet super choice spot where your player doesn't see the boundaries of the world that they are playing in.
Exactly.
And then that makes them feel like it's that much bigger, and their mind fills in the gaps of what's behind that door, what's going on over there.
Yeah.
But once they see the end of the world, then they are reminded that they're playing a game.
It's Truman Show.
It's the Truman Show. It's totally the Truman Show.
And what? That's a wall. I thought it was the sky.
Yeah,
that's exactly
totally.
it. Invisible walls.
Yeah.
Not even invisible walls.
Need to go away.
Okay, there we go. I just brought that
Not
one.
a fan.
I think, though, developers are getting good about removing invisible walls, but now it's still, I think, because we've grown accustomed to these artificial barricades and barriers, right? It's like, maybe like a Gears of War or something. It's like, oh, this building, it's rubble here, so you can't go.
Yeah, they're not visible walls.
Yeah, visible
Invisible
walls.
walls are not
walls.
visible
But
walls.
Which is
Oh,
better.
well, I can't go over there.
That's a step in the right
I can't
direction.
climb over this like 3-foot tall wall or something.
Yeah. Wait, 3 foot tall.
No, so I mean, you'll
sometimes.
fall,
Right,
there's
yeah.
like this
true.
little pile of rubble.
There's
and it's
like this,
oh, I can't
this
get
row
past
of
it.
little flowers, and you're like, oh, whoa.
Yeah.
I cannot step over that.
I can jump over barriers and take cover and
explode
but
the whole
not-
city.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. Let's developers, just look at the old days and figure out some old stuff to do and
Well, one
add
thing
it back. I don't know.
I want to say your example about throwing a rock in GTA reminded me. I talked to one of the producers for it was either Splinter Cell, Pandora Tomorrow, or Chaos Theory. I can't remember which one, but I was playing the game with him and doing this interview, and I asked him. At one point, he went into this train, and there was a dog, a caged dog, traveling in a passenger train, and the dog started barking, right? And he pulled out his gun as Sam Fisher and shot it. And I'm like, okay, why did you just do that? I was like curious, what would you think, and why they put that in the game and allowed you to kill the dog? And he said, the thing is, what we realize is some people will want to kill that dog because it not just either you're a jerk. Right, you want to kill animals.
You're a jerk.
Okay,
Got it.
most likely.
Or it's a stealth game, and that dog is alerting the guards, right? So they said because we know people will want to kill the dog, we had to program that in. So I thought that was cool to be able to think like, what will a gamer
Think what
want
other
to
people might
do
wanna
in this
do.
environment, on their own? Like even if that wasn't a gameplay element, it's like there's gonna be people that are gonna want to shoot animals. And
To go back to the beginning though, I just don't know if I buy the whole resource heavy stuff because like I said, with this talk, I'm gonna give you one more example with this Richard Bardo guy, who I'm smitten with, obviously.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be like that. Here's a good example. In Mud 2, I guess there's a second one. One player used circumstances of the world's natural physics to create a secret hiding place for himself. By dropping one of the world's teleportation objects into flowing water, which had its own kind of physics, so he could move himself into the space beneath the grate where the water eventually deposited. So he found himself to be able to get in there. And then another guy, crafty player.
How does he get out?
At the teleportation, I don't know. Maybe the water flowed both ways. I don't know.
Or maybe he can teleport out once it's in there.
Well, yeah, that's
Sorry.
probably it. Anyways, then so another player found a way to use the water flow to send an explosive keg of gunpowder into the player's secret area and blow the whole place up.
That's the best.
Now, that experience is why I'm talking about this. That's what I want, and I want to be able to have that more, hey, let's make our own part of that game.
are you playing Minecraft?
Yes, and I also like the other one, the 2D one, what's it called?
Terraria.
Terraria.
Yeah.
I love all that stuff. I like Terraria better than Minecraft.
Well, that's where you're going to get these experiences, I think.
Right, but I want it from AAA too.
Well, I think that this might be a disconnect, is the AAA games that you're talking about are trying to tell a story. Whereas games like Minecraft or Mud 2, they're trying to create a world. So these are different goals.
I don't know if they are, but I'll continue.
I think when you're creating a world, you come up with systems and designs for these systems and rules for the world, and you don't really care what people do in that world. When you're creating a story, you create the world as a means to realize your goals.
Right.
So if you want the player to do something that you've crafted, you're going to have to guide them like on a leash, and I think that might be why we're not seeing it so much. But also, I do think it takes very different people to make each of those things, each of those types of games.
Or a different mindset when you go into it. I think that the guided thing is right, but I think you can. It's just the leash again. We always go back to the idea, metaphor, but like the leash in the guided experience, right? We're doing it with Deus Ex. We're doing it with Mass Effect. We're doing it a little bit, Alan Wake and stuff like that. Not Alan Wake.
Heavy Rain?
Heavy Rain.
Heavy Rain.
Right, we're doing these like in Heavy Rain, I can do a bunch of stuff in that apartment before I go and do what you want me to do.
Right.
That's all I'm saying. All right, I think we beat the horse to death on that, but good discussion. Any final thoughts?
I don't know. Shenmue does pretty all right, and I think Heavy Rain
Let's just
does
bring back
too.
Shenmue, yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh damn it. Shenmue 2 never came out, right?
It did.
Oh yeah.
It did.
Yeah.
Shenmue 3, was it the one that was supposed to be?
Shenmue 3
Yeah.
did
Not come out here.
Yeah.
But
come out in Japan though, right?
yeah,
I think it did.
sounds right. Because
Yeah.
there was people talking about wanting to bring it
Yeah.
out and stuff, but
I forgot. I wanted to mention one weird thing because this is funny, and I'll see if you guys remember it. But when we were talking about the AI, it's kind of saying the same word over and over again. I remember the movie Existenz. Do you guys ever watch
I love that movie.
Okay,
That's so
Do you
good.
remember? So in that movie, there's basically it's gross. It's what's the guy's name?
Cronenberg.
It's about like this. There's a controller. It's like a fleshy controller. You plug it in your back, and
Oh,
you go into this like AI world, like virtual reality, game. But the game looks like real life, whatever. And at some point, like this, guy comes over and he's like, "Would you like the soup specials?" And they're like, they don't say the right thing. So he's like, "Would you like the soup specials?" And to see like a real person just say the same thing over and over again, it was kind of
that's
good.
funny.
Yeah.
So it's the limitations
Yeah.
of
limitations
even
of-
that that advanced a game.
Wait, I just by saying that means we're screwed.
Yeah.
If it gets all the way to that, we're still.
Yeah.
All right, that's gonna do it for the show. You should check out podcasts that we're all on. And again, it's bitmob.com/podcast.
Yep, look for the retro edition. Of the
Retro
podcast.
edition.
Yep.
And then we can find you on Twitter, right? Somewhere?
Yeah. Twitter, Alex Noisy, Noisy.
Cool.
On Twitter.
Oh, so you went for the real.
Yeah. Well,
Noisy.
yeah. Alex
is the real
Noisy was
Noisy.
taken, but I think that was me earlier, and I can't remember my login
Oh,
stuff.
really?
So, yeah. So now
Nice.
I'm phonetic. Alex
Nice.
Noisy. Yeah.
And then stay tuned next week. We're gonna do part 2. We'll talk more about retro stuff.
Love it.
Game over.